It's National Signing Day, and it's time to break down the Florida State recruiting class.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into a special edition of Locked On Seminoles. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and thank you for tuning in on a Wednesday night, National Signing Day, December 20th. This has been a wild day for me as I have helped many people try to navigate this, and I'm going to try to break down Florida State's class best I can, but there's still more to come because there's portal stuff to talk about. You got the bowl game coming up, etc. So all that this week and more, but let's just break down the class today. So with that being said, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, make sure you check it out. It is the best app going if you're going to bet on sports today. And today's show is going to be brought to you because every moment means more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's a $150 if your team wins on a moneyline bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege to get started. So first off, before I start answering questions and diving into the chat, I'm going to run down for about 5 minutes, just general thoughts on the kids that have signed. In case you didn't see the most latest signee, to my knowledge, it was something just happened a few seconds ago. Todeus White, the big defensive lineman out of the state of North Carolina, has selected the Seminoles and he has signed. That is big news because, as you will see here in just a few minutes, defensive line and front seven recruiting is not where it needs to be, and I will dive into that specifically. But I'm going to start at quarterback and we'll work our way down. First off, a kid that I know well, Luke Cromahawk, quarterback, Benedictine in Savannah, Georgia, really good football player, kid I got to know well, family I got to know well, his 7-on-7 organization, Team Dimes, etc. They're all fun to be around. They're good people. That's the kind of guy a locker room can rally around. And it helps that he has a big arm and he's a really good athlete. It also helps that he's smart. It also helps that he's very competitive. This is a kid that Norvell targeted before he had started a high school game and he offered him, which I thought was crazy at the time. And then I saw him play and I'm like, well, Norvell is ahead of the curve here. Bottom line, this is a kid that can be your national championship winning quarterback somewhere down the line. I do not think he's coming into play right away if they don't get Cam Ward, nothing like that. I don't like freshmen playing. I've said that many times. But this is a big-time player. You got Cam Davis at running back. You got Danzy at running back. They're good. They're really good athletes. Both of them can play multiple positions. You're good. The wide receiver corps has a lot of talent. I don't think enough of the guys, and I've said it many times, have been given enough credit, like Wayne and some of these guys. They have speed. They have size. They've got a big guy on the outside. They got from Maryland. They've got players. They've got players. Not worried about the offensive skill sets there. They got arguably the nation's best tight end out of Georgia, flipped him from the University of Georgia. Fantastic. Offensive line, I need to dive into more senior film. I've only started, so I'm going to pass on giving a full grade there. But I do know the numbers aren't where they need to be. They did keep a certain young man from Pensacola home. I'm going to talk about him here in a second. But I think Florida State has got to win more battles in Central and South Florida for O-linemen, even if it's just one more kid a year, because not only is it a good player, you're probably taking it away from either UCF, Miami, or Florida. Maybe Auburn or Alabama or Georgia too. But winning those battles for the guys in the trenches has always been what Florida State's about. And there's nothing wrong with doing that again. Looking at the offensive line specifically, just kind of thinking about it, if Florida State would have got one more guy, like a Gerby Lambert out of Boston or somebody like that, wherever it's at, it would have been nice. But they did get four bodies up front that are big. They got a kid from California that not many people talk about and flipped him from Southern Cal. I don't know how to pronounce his name, Manesi Ititi, Central Catholic in Modesto. It's Northern California. That's a big dude. Those are the kind of kids you can develop into something. He's a national top 150 kid, but I don't know much about him because he's from California. So I only got to see him play a little bit. They did get Ty Hilton out of the Orlando area. That's one kid they got, but I still think they could have got one more guy. The kid that I know the best is Jonathan Daniels out of Pensacola. I think he's got a chance to be a multi-year starter. I know the most about him because I've seen him the most. He played at Pine Forest. big guy, powerful, could probably play guard or tackle, but I like him better at guard. Now let's move over to the defensive side, and this is where it's a little iffy. Florida State just lost Blunt. I'm sure most people know that. He flipped to Miami. They also didn't get any of the kids that they probably really wanted out of Georgia that were the elite kids early on. Next year's class in Georgia is even better, so that's a chance at a reprisal. But they didn't get some of those kids, and they always used to. South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, those kids, Bowden used to get a lot of those and win ugly down to the last second battles. Florida State didn't win as many. LJ McCray just signed with Florida. There was a chance they could still get him. They didn't. They lost Blunt. Artavius Jones is right down the road in Bluntstown, Florida, ironically, similar name there, and he goes to Miami. So you're losing guys not only that you needed, but they're going to rivals. That's really hard. And quite honestly, this is a trend now. Florida State is not winning enough battles up front with defensive linemen. Same deal with linebacker, although I think the kids they have are very underrated. I've talked about it numerous times. I really like Florida State's group as a linebacker hold. The two kids, they got both of them. I don't know why it is with the linebacker situation. It's harder to grade kids at linebacker now than it ever has been because of the passing game. But like Camden Fryer, for instance, one of the receivers Florida State signed, he's really a pain in the butt to guard. I think Jaden Parrish could at least hang with him somewhat. And Fryer's really good. Obviously, his dad is the Fryer that played on the 93 team that won the state champ or the national championship. I think Jaden Parrish could hang with him, but he's only listed as a 3-star. So that's a little goofy. But Florida State needed more numbers at linebacker, and they needed at least one more just high-end guy. They didn't get it. Why? Florida State has a tremendous history at that spot. So they ended up as a top 5 class. They lose Blunt. I'll get to KJ Bolden here in a second. And they didn't finish with the other guys in the front 7. There's got to be somewhere they could have got one more guy. Getting Denaeus White is a big deal, though. Here's the thing. 330 pounds. Powerful, could play 1-tech. Depending on his conditioning and everything, you might move him around, play some 3-tech. That's something that's really important. Florida State needed more of that. And I'm sure somebody's going to ask me about their transfer portal situation. Another kid just hit the portal from the D-line. I'm not going to get into that tonight, but that's something to think about. The kid that's interesting is Jamari Flagg. I've seen him play. He's a developmental player that is a 300-pounder out of Booker T. Really, I don't know. I didn't see him play live this year. I saw him play live as a junior. I don't know how quickly he can play. I'm going to watch his senior film pretty soon and do some breakdowns. But they did get 2 humongous kids from the middle, and they needed it. I just don't think either one of them, from what I know, at least to this point, are impact guys. Redshirt year, then yes. But Florida State's going to need help next year. So the portal is probably important. As we move into the secondary, I mean, they got Lester. There was some concern about getting him. KJ Bolden did flip to Georgia. From all intents and purposes, everything I'd heard leading up to today was Auburn or Florida State. Georgia was in the background, and then today they weren't. A lot of stuff going on there in the background for why he went there, but it is what it is. Jamari Howard's a really long kid. They got out of Norland. I like him. And they did get Kai Bates. I mean, it's a tremendous defensive back class. Even without KJ, Florida State did very well. Overall, I thought it'd be somewhere around 10th. I saw him ranked 10th. I saw him ranked 11th. I forget the services. But Florida State had a good class, but it could have been elite. They kind of let it slip away. And that's the difference between winning it and like just getting to the playoff. Missing KJ, missing like another front 7 guy, and maybe just, one other player is the difference between being the number 9 seed and being the number 2 seed in the playoffs in a couple of years. That's why I bring this up. And that's why, quite honestly, I think it's really important to bring up. You just can't have that happen. But at the same time, Florida State's in a hell of a lot better position with this recruiting class than they have been with any other here recently. Because, again, they missed at D-line, and they got 300-pound kids that can move. They've got a chance to be good. They just maybe not be impact, but they've got a chance to be good. I'll take that over what Florida State has done in some other situations. And, they've got a chance to get somebody in the portal to kind of help them in the meantime. Speaking of help them, let's go ahead and bring up FanDuel. This is today's primary sponsor. FanDuel, Make sure you're checking it out because as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get it done than right now today. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Florida State overall, what your thoughts are. I'm going to open up the chat. I got a few questions here. If you have anything, let it rip. I'm just going to kind of go through, but I wanted to start off with my thoughts. All right. Let's go. We miss you. All these guys. Armando signed with Florida or with Miami, Kenneth. He was at the same time Denias. They both had 6 p.m. Jeremiah is going to Ohio State. Let's see what else we got. Jeremiah Smith didn't turn in his I've been told he is going to Ohio State. Just in case anybody missed it, he is going to go to Ohio State, unless I was misled. And I'm talking about afterwards. I heard about all the he didn't or did. He's going to Ohio State. Let's see. What do we got here? LT. These people are hilarious. Here's the deal. You're going to miss some let's just talk about Jeremiah. You're going to miss some things. You're going to miss some players. You're going to miss some of these guys that everybody wants. Jeremiah Smith was the big fish, but Florida State was trailing in that the entire time. The entire time. That's just the bottom line. And I'm not here to bitch and moan about it because, I mean, I got to know Jeremiah and, Florida State wasn't in the same position as Ohio State based on his specific criteria. So what's his criteria? He told me multiple times in face-to-face conversations that he picked Ohio State originally. He committed in December last year because he wanted to be developed by them, and they had proven it with other receivers over and over and over again. I get it. Miami finished second. He actually had the Miami hat with him at the ceremony. I know that flat out because he told one of my buddies that was at the ceremony and who interviewed him. So I don't know what else Florida State could have done. They had the last visit. They did in-homes with him. He was up for unofficial visits multiple times. Florida State staff recruited the heck out of Jeremiah Smith. Anybody that wants to bitch and moan about that, I don't know. There's some people bitching about, like, somebody showed me a text that they'd gotten from a Florida State fan that said, this class isn't acceptable. Norvell needs to be removed. I'm like, they've won 13 in a row this year, and it goes back to next year, somewhere around 20 games in a row they've missed. Those kind of fans need to hit the road, by the way. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. My buddy, he sent me the screenshot. It's hilarious. Florida State didn't finish where they should, but you're going to fire a coach that just went 13-0? People need to get real. I don't really think there's much you can do about Smith. Again, they recruited him as it's just unfortunate. Hunt, honestly, really disappointed. Most of the good transfers have already been picked up. That's something that I'm going to mention here in a minute. We'll get into that a little bit more, but I'll touch on it now since you brought it up, Hunt. They obviously got Marvin Jones Jr. That's huge because he's a defensive end, and Florida State's DN recruiting is not where it needs to be. They got some good players, but they needed an elite kid this year. Blunt could have been that guy. They didn't get him. That's unfortunate for Florida State. But there's other good players. And again, maybe they end up getting a kid out of the portal and there's other kids that can develop. I'm not really sure what you do about it, as the saying goes. I'm really hopeful that D.D. Holmes has an impact. I really liked his film. He's out of Gonzaga up in D.C., but maybe he takes a year. But that's typical. Once you get into a situation you're relying on freshmen, there aren't many Jeremiah Smiths. He's going to play wherever he goes. You have to find a way to redshirt and slowly develop. And that's what got Florida State to the class or the year they had this year at 13-0. They developed a lot of 3-star kids, several key transfers, and then one with juniors, seniors, fifth-year seniors, and a few sixth-year seniors like Jordan Travis. That's fine. But it still would have been better if you'd have hit the home run with, a few other kids. Let's see. This is hilarious here. Brooklyn boy, if you had hired Dion, this wouldn't even be a problem. Yeah, Dion is not the answer. He is not ready for elite Power 5, in my opinion. Let's see. Ian Oliver, Miami garbage, and so is the fan base. FSU lives free in all his head. Let's see. Kenneth Clark, I like the classes. I like the class. Not saying I don't like the class. I'm just saying it could have been better. It is what it is. Do I think they're going to win the national title based on this class? No, but this needs to be the bottom end, like around 10. You get 3 of these in a row, and your numbers with the portal will go down because you won't need as many guys. You take 5 to 8 just to kind of fill out your roster. A kid turns pro, somebody gets hurt, whatever. You just have an unfortunate couple misses with the recruiting class before, whatever that is. That's all. But right now, Florida State's class, although a good one, again, it was top 5 going in to today. You didn't get Blunt. You didn't get KJ Bolden. That hurts. It is what it is. You can't miss on the big fish every time. I do think that like Cam Davis was banged up some this year. That hurt his ranking, and some other kids, they probably would have had better players if it wasn't, or better rankings if it wasn't some from unfortunate things like that. And a few of their key guys are not from down south, or like the Hickman kid, the linebacker, he plays out in the sticks of South Carolina. He's not ranked where he should be ranked. It just is. It's a fact that's not maybe. That's just true. Like his film was really good, but he plays at Indiantown or something like that in South Carolina. Indian Land, I forget the name of the high school. And that's rough, man. You're not always going to win those battles. Take it as it is. All right. LinkedIn jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. For me, I know that as somebody that has used LinkedIn to get a job and use LinkedIn to look for people, like for internships, the app's really easy to use. That's really not debatable if somebody goes on it and makes themselves look at it for 30 to 40 seconds. It's easy to get around and navigate, and that's number one thing for me because I'm not the most patient. And they also have screening tools that will help you get the right people in front of you faster. They set it up so you can pick what you need to get the people that you need taken care of. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. All right. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LinkedIn College. That's linkedin.com/LockedOn College to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. If y'all have anything besides like the line play kind of speaks for itself, what would it be? That's my question for everybody. What would it be? Is it another? I mean, obviously Jeremiah Smith, that speaks for itself too. Is it another receiver? Quarterback's great. Running back's great. I think the DB class is still big time. And Johnny Locke says Deion's Colorado class sucks. Colorado is not going to get over the top with Deion or anybody else. It's just too hard to recruit there. He'll do a decent job, but he won't be there after next year either. You can just about guarantee that once Shador is gone. I think that they could have used just more balance and then that one more stud up front. I'd love to have seen another offensive tackle and another defensive lineman that was highly rated. Those are the two things. And I'm a lineman guy. When I go to games, I watch from the end zone most of the time because I like to see vertical and see the line play. That's just me. With Cam Ward possibly coming to Florida State, do you think next year's team would have a better shot than this year's team if they sign it? Are you talking about for the national title? Because the answer is no. Florida State is not winning the national title next year. They are not. Cam Ward or not, they are not winning the national title. They're losing too many players. That's my prediction. With the portal, you don't know for sure, but they would have to really hit it And again, the only guy they've got committed right now is Marvin Jones Jr. So I highly, highly doubt that's going to be the case. But with Ward, you have a chance to win 9, 10 games, and that helps you into the next season, and you've already got quarterbacks on the roster that you like. Yeah, C. Black, this is unacceptable for Florida State off a 13-0 season. I think they've got some issues to figure out on the coaching staff. Like, why did this happen? You should have gotten more players. Linebacker, they're just short numbers. Players are good, but they're short numbers. D-line, they missed out. KJ Bolden, they missed, but their DB class is really good. They could have used another offensive lineman, etc. They're 2 or 3 guys off from where they should have been, in my opinion. Marlowe, what recruit wants to come to Florida State and live in a trailer park city? You guys are a bunch of idiots. Who is this moron? Let's see what else we got. This is what I was just talking about. Eric Sutton, this staff needs to get upgraded. The question is, how do you change things when you're 13-0? I had this discussion with somebody earlier, actually 2 different people. One was about another team, but it's the same deal. When you have a really good year, you're a major bowl team, or you're in Florida State's case, you're 13-0. How do you get rid of a guy? Are you afraid that will disrupt the room amongst the coaches and maybe the players that like him? Because all the guys have done obviously a pretty good job if you're 13-0. That's the only thing, and I don't have an answer for that. But at the same time, they didn't exactly get it. They're close, though. I mean, if you get KJ Bolden and Blunt, are we having this discussion? That's how close it is, and that's why recruiting is so wild, because all that happened on signing day. I think Norvell is in denial. This is not recruiting at Memphis. C. Black. Well, it's not, but they also just had their best class in years. Since when? I don't know. But they didn't have a class like this anytime recently. So, it is what it is. Let's see. Mike is afraid of letting Odell and Shannon go. I don't know if that's the case or not, but those are 2 spots that are struggling. I mean, they could have been better. And the players they got are good. They just didn't get enough of them. There's not a kid they signed I don't think can play at Florida State. That's the best news. Nothing drives me crazy faster and more consistently than bringing in a kid and you watch the film, you're like, there's no way. What are we doing here? I don't see that on this recruiting class. So that's the good news. Jim says exactly 13-0. Hard not to get everybody you'd want pretty much, but Eric Sutton brings up a good point. He says those guys are older and recruiting kids, they've become burnt out. It could be. Some guys do get tired of it. Odell used to be a really good recruiter. I don't think it's as easier for older guys now. I'm sure most of them don't like to deal with NIL. Jimbo Fisher would scour the staff and hold his staff accountable for misses. You know what? That's true. A lot of guys do that. Urban Meyer was that way. Saban's that way, etc. I don't know what the answer is, though. We haven't signed a top 100 D lineman in 3 years. That's a problem. There's just no way around it. Here's the thing. How do you get rid of Odell? He's one of the most famous guys in Florida State history. He was one of the keys to Florida State building their foundation. He was one of the first elite recruits that Bowden got. He's out of Bartow, which is, Central Florida. It's not that far from where I live. That's hard. But can something be done? Because it's not a coaching issue. It's just getting the players. That's something to think about. I don't know. I'm not very happy with it either, because I like to see guys go out on their own terms. But I mean, I'd imagine the pressure is on. He's got to get somebody big time next year up front. No ifs, or ands, or buts about it. He's got to get somebody big time. That's just the way it is. I don't know if that's an NIL thing. I don't know if it's a relationship thing, a communication on the staff. Every recruitment, in my experience, is different. So I'm not going to lay the blame at the feet of any one person or any one scenario. Losing Blunt, for instance, he's a young kid and it's easier for him to go to Miami because he goes to Miami Central. I understand that, but you still had him committed and he flips on signing day. That's rough. That is rough. Let's see. Christopher Ryan. We have been good again for 2 years. The teams are losing guys too. Have been good for a decade. It takes time, a slow climb. there's some truth in that statement. Florida State, as I noted, and Christopher Ryan aptly brings up, they got better. This is a much better class than what they've had recently. That's not really debatable. If you followed Florida State recruiting at all, you would know that. I don't remember the last time they got 2 D tackles like this, and we're still complaining, but they got White. That's a 330-pound kid, give or take, for instance. You know, and you get the kid out of Booker T. That's a 300-pounder, Jamori Flagg. You could do a lot worse. I'm a little more concerned about it from the numbers perspective, and they're losing guys, not only that they wanted, but they're going to their rival. That's the double whammy. There's, you know, that's just not good. I mean, Florida's a sinking ship, and they still kept LJ McCray. I would love to know the backstory on that one, and I'm going to try to find it out. If I get it, I'll obviously share it here on the podcast, but it just happened. So that happened like an hour before this show, so I haven't got the backstory yet. I will see what I can find out from Brandon Olson and everybody else, because that's pretty wild to me. Let's see here. Eric says they let Bobby go, so Odell is not more important than Bobby to this program. Well, that's also a good point. But who's going to replace him, and how does that impact the team, the mentorship, the other players that have come and gone from the program coming back? There's a lot of things that go on with that. That's a lot of political stuff to get rid of a legend like Odell Higgins. See, Black, Miami gets the number 3 class off a 7-5 year. I don't want to hear it's due to the Atlantic Coast Conference. Look, that part's just fact. Yeah, Miami out-recruited Florida State for a few kids, and that's usually the difference. It's usually splitting hairs. But those couple of kids are different. I mean, if you flip where Blunt signs, or if Florida State gets one other kid, whether it's KJ Bolden or something else, they're like number 5 instead of number 10. Between like 4 and 10, there's very little difference in the recruiting classes. Very little. At the very top, traditionally speaking, you know, whether it's Georgia, Alabama, Miami, Florida State, whoever it's been over the last 30 years, it's because of like one guy kind of stands out. You know, Ohio State gets Jeremiah, so they stay in the top 5. Would they have stayed in the top 5 if he'd have went to Florida State or Miami? Maybe not. So it's really close. Let's see here. One more point here, and I'm going to wrap it up, because I want to get back on the phones and get information. That is the key. If anything else that you take from this podcast, note that I'm just starting, because I was helping a million different people today, and like my phone would ring, or I would call somebody and somebody else call. It was just back and forth. The rumors, getting texts, getting inboxes. It's wild. I'm glad that I didn't go out on the road today. I'd have lost my mind and tried to cover one of these. It was better just being at home. I'll find out as much as I can about KJ Bolden, LJ McCray, Blunt, or anything else, and kind of get an idea what the barometer is and what I'm curious about. So y'all have your questions ready coming up over the next 3 to 5 days. As we head into the game against Georgia, how much is Florida State now going to focus on the portal, or are they going to be really picky? I don't know what the situation is, because as I've hinted the last few days, NIL is a concern, a big one. And NIL is also a situation where other teams are paying more. I've heard that. So that's something else I need to find out, because that's still too broad. I don't have anywhere near enough specifics, but I've heard that from multiple sources that are people that are connected to Florida State and some that are not. But both are basically saying the same thing, and that also bothers me. Let's see. One other here. What do we got? Oofers. Transfer portal have so much talent. I don't see what's the problem with 2 kids flipping. It's because they're 2 elite kids. That's why. Both of them 5 stars. In K, a lot of people lied and said when we win games, flip the culture in terms of the recruiting classes being elite. Truth is, wins and losses aren't end all be all. Recruiters recruit. That is a fantastic line. At the end, that those 2 words, recruiters recruit. Florida State probably needs one more key recruiter on their staff. I think that we could all agree on that. I'm going to leave it at that for this podcast. That's a great way to end, because recruiters recruit is something that's true. There are guys that have sucked as coaches forever that stay in the business because they can get kids to come. They can get parents to believe in them, et cetera, et cetera. It's crazy. Let's think about this. Tomorrow, I'm hoping that when I do a live stream or I have any kind of podcast, depends on how much information I get. If I do a live stream, there will be some more clarity. But again, for those of you that come back tomorrow or anytime in the next few days, and please do, let's hear your questions about the transfer portal and where you would focus, like 1 through 5, position A all the way through position E, whatever. That's what I'm kind of curious about, because they were good today. They got a really good class, but they weren't where they should have been. That is my finish. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank everybody for coming in. Please hit that like button and that subscribe. Become an everydayer and share this podcast and comment. I love doing this, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody have a good night.